Everybody, sit straight, spine erect. Chin away from your chest, eyes gently closed. Shift your eye gaze to the third eye, the center of the eyebrows, Jyotishmati, the light of awareness within. Take a deep breath and exhale. One more time. We'll begin today's session with the YEC's Entrepreneurship Chant. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamayam Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome to this special satsang. What a beautiful way. I think, today is probably the first time we're going to represent the true essence of what YEC is meant for, Youth Entrepreneurship and Youth Excellence Center. And Soundarya, for your benefit, I think some of us who have been traveling with us, they know this in the eternal words that we all are familiar with, Astoma Sadgamaya. We actually use that as our entrepreneurship anthem. And what it actually means is the first line says Astoma Sadgamaya. So Asat means untruth. Any place where we see an unfair status quo, an inefficient state, we call that as an untruth. As an entrepreneurial journey, our opportunity is going from Asat to Sadgamaya, Asatoma to Sadgamaya. So basically, we spot opportunity, we spot situations which are unfair status quos, either within our world or in the outer world, inner world or the outer world. That could be in your workplace, at your home, or in the country or the city, whatever you represent. And then we basically work towards making it a Sadgamaya, make that into an efficient, excellence, and joyful state. That's what we believe is an entrepreneurial journey. In fact, that is the journey that everybody that is part of the Sanatana Dharma is all about. Sanatana Dharma that we all come from. It's that is the true essence, and that's how the third line says, Mrityorva Amritangamaya. We go from being finite beings to infinite beings. And we are so blessed that at such a young age you've already are representing that element of the infiniteness. So we're going to get a glimpse of what that exuberance, excellence, entrepreneurship, and infiniteness is. So with that, the leader for today's program, Savitha Garu, over to you. So you're on mute. Sorry, Savitha, you're on mute.
Muted. Okay,
yeah.
Trying to figure out the technicalities. Soundarya, thank you so much for attending this satsang. I'm super excited to talk to you, like not in person, but virtual. And thank you for accepting this invitation. I know it was such a short notice. So super excited. I would request Rajesh ji to introduce Soundarya because I know he's your mentor. So I would like Rajesh ji to say a few words and introduce Soundarya.
It will take the whole hour, but so I'll keep it short.
Oh. and then Rajesh ji, first we want to see a glimpse of you, darshan. We need both darshan and darshana.
Hold on 1 second. I'm just searching where is it.
So while you're waiting, do we know the meaning between darshan and darshana?
I don't know.
So darshan means it's like it's kind of an appearance, right? It's sakshatkaram. It's an appearance or avatar. Darshana is a point of view, how you look at the things. Darshan is a point of view. Actually, the Sanatana Dharma is always about presenting point of views. There was never something enforced upon you. There are like 6 darshanas. It's just like they present it to us as, hey, here is a point of view for you to consider and own it as your own experiential truth. So what you're going to present is darshana of Soundarya's experiential truth, right? And then now what we see is darshan of our being.
Beautiful.
Pranam Rajesh ji, so fantastic.
Namaskaram, everyone. So it'll
Hello,
take a
Rajesh.
long time for me to introduce Soundarya. I met her only a few months ago, but it looks like I know her for a lifetime. I've been mentoring her in a very peer mentoring way, because one thing, it makes me look very young, because peer mentoring means I am also younger. But in terms of what she can teach, I can be a student for a long, long time. So she is a multi-talented polymath. So she's a writer, and one of those people I say, oh, I can learn a lot of writing from her. And she was teaching me how to use Notion, and what she did in 3 hours, somebody will take 3 days to do it. She might probably show some of those things today also. But I'll not take much time, but it'll be a blast. Please fasten your seatbelts, and everything will be, it's all a go.
Okay, you are all, I mean, all of you are extremely generous with your words, and I'll try to live up to it right now. So before anything, I did want to say that I have been wanting to join the YEC weekly calls for a while, because I remember Srini asked me maybe 3 months ago, but sadly that one day I couldn't join. But since then I've been thinking that, okay, maybe I'll join at some point in the future. And today it was so opportune, because Rajesh told me about this in the morning and I was at his house. It was, everything just aligned so perfectly. So let me know if I should begin talking about what I wanted to present today, or
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
it's all yours. Yeah.
Okay, great. This is quite impromptu, so bear with me as I go through the next 30 minutes. What I'm going to talk about today is, it's both a framework of how you can think about goal setting and planning for the next year, as it is about teaching you how to use a new software and hopefully a new system as well. Because we all come across products, tools, and softwares every day, but I feel like if we put some more thought into the system we can build around that tool, then we can get so much more done with the time that we have today. So I'm a huge fan of building workflows and systems around tools. And for the past 2 years, or the past 2.5 years, I have been investing time into building a system and routine around this tool called Notion. I assume many of you have heard of this. Many of you use it already as well. So you're no stranger to it. I got introduced to Notion through a friend of mine back in February of 2019. And in the beginning, it really seemed like a to-do list tool. I could just take notes in it, take down daily tasks that I want to work on. But as I learned about how to use it more and more, and also as I learned about this system thinking, so just system thinking as a whole, I realized how you can combine both of them to build a very robust planner in Notion that's built on a few fundamental frameworks that will help me get things done. Because the point of any productivity tool is that it helps you stay focused on what you want to accomplish, and you accomplish the goal. Let me share my screen. And I really would like this to be interactive with all of you. So please unmute yourself and stop me if you want to ask a question. And when I'm asking questions, be that annoying kid in class who raises their hand and answers all the questions. That's what I'm looking for. Great. Srini is already there.
Yeah, the annoying kid, and you will see that. So the couple of things that I will say. So the impromptu is what defines YEC. Everything is ad hoc. So nothing is pre-planned. Like, this entire session was a hack that we wanted to do yesterday. And then just this afternoon, it all happened. So that's how things happen here. So nothing ad hoc here. That is actually very much the true nature. And then the second thing is now the annoying part comes in. All the assumptions about, you guys must already be familiar with Notion and all that stuff. All those assumptions are like out the water. Like you taught Rajesh today, and you're going to teach me how to use Notion today.
Thank you. Okay. So what you see on the screen, More Time Every Day, is really the title of an online cohort-based course that I'm teaching. I taught the first cohort back in August of 2021, this year. And currently I'm making changes to the upcoming cohort, which is going to start January of 2022, just as the new year begins. I'll try to give you a quick highlight of the entire course in this call. And of course, if you are interested more, then you can just ask me questions, and you can even join the course if you're interested after that. Great. So how many of you have already begun planning your 2022 or thinking about it?
I am, yeah.
Okay, great. Savitha, so do you have a plan in mind of how you're going to do it?
I mean, as Srini said, I've used Notion. Mine is a little bit different. I use different tools to plan. We had conversation, I do vision board. I do Notion. Notion is mostly I use as a second brain for myself. But other than that, yeah, just writing like, some basic questions or something like that. Like look for some life books scenarios where you can answer certain questions and build on that. So yeah, definitely thought is there, but no action has been taken as of yet.
As of yet. Right,
Yes.
because we're still 2 weeks away from, or 3 weeks away from end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. We all make New Year's resolutions as the year begins, because it's a great time to actually, it gives us a reason to sit down and think about the past year and look for the next year and what to do. Because in a matter of one day, you go from 2021 to 2022. So I also noticed that a lot of people give up on their resolutions or just don't accomplish them, not because they didn't put in the effort, probably because of a lack of a system, a lack of accountability, lack of a feedback loop on what they're working on. So in any case, the first step that I feel like anyone goes through when they're thinking about the next year is setting their goals. What is it that you want to achieve the next year? It's true that we all overestimate what we can do in one day, but underestimate what we can actually accomplish in a year. And I'm saying this because just today, I asked Rajesh a simple question. So Rajesh, what were the highlights from this current year of yours? And somehow we both went into this exercise of reflecting back on this 1 year so deeply that we spent, I think, 2 to 3 hours just sitting down and writing down all the highlights, what we did. And I personally realized that there's so much that I did this year, so much more than I could have anticipated at the beginning of this year. So I actually would love to know some of your highlights from this year. If Savitha, can you share one highlight that you're just so happy that it happened?
Like exercise routines, different kinds of exercise routines I added into my life. Did I follow through everything? No, but like I still, that joining YEC, being a part of YEC as well. It's been in years since. And I think one big thing is what YEC helped me was sharing. I used to learn things, but hear about it or jot it down in Notion or anything, but never would share with anyone. I would share with just family or like friends, immediate friends, but never on a platform or such. So one shift happened was that yes, sharing is important. As they say, sharing is caring. So that's one thing I learned this year for sure. Yeah, that's what's it.
Could you call out someone else's name on this call so they can also share?
So Kanika, next is Uma, ready. Kanika? Sorry. I don't know if she's there. Uma, do you want to go? Just the voice.
Sorry, I am driving somebody, so you have to pick somebody else.
Okay, sorry.
I'm just listening in.
Kiran?
Hey, Savi.
Kiran,
Kiran.
Yeah. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I was quickly trying to really think. Soundarya, surprisingly, like nothing big came to my mind, but actually I was asking my daughter Sanskriti to help me. Hey, what do you think I achieved this year? And she reminded me that for a long time I was trying to do a little bit of yoga certification, right? To kind of do a structured learning. And earlier this year, I was able to kind of get that done, that checklist item. So that gave me a combination of, physical as well as the theoretical aspects around yoga. So I think that's one thing that I would cherish from this year.
I think that's a big thing. And really, maybe I positioned the question in a very intimidating way, but all I meant was something that you're happy about compared to a year ago, something you accomplished this year. And I think that's really great. Congrats. So why I'm bringing this up is that setting goals for a year is not a very easy process, because there's so many dimensions to all of our lives that about a year ago, I was introduced to something called the life wheel. I'm not sure how many of you have used this or seen this before.
I have seen this before, but not.
You have seen this?
I have seen it, but I haven't. I don't use it this level of dissect.
Okay.
I've simplified into 4 or 5.
I actually, these are helpful quadrants, but I feel like we all have our own set of quadrants. For example, in my life, I don't just think of it as career. I would probably break this down into content creation on one side and perhaps startup on the other side. So you might think of it as full-time job and passion projects. So this is just a helpful high-level framework that helps you get a quick snapshot of where your life is at. So what I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks as I plan my next year is take this life wheel and just rate myself on a scale of 0 to 10 on all the quadrants that I truly care about in my life. For example, family is certainly something that I care about, health, finance, career, and so on. So first step is to write down what those quadrants are. And generally it's recommended to stick to 8 to 10. And then you ask yourself, where would you stand on a scale of 0 to 10? Which really is a very subjective evaluation. You think about what 10 looks like for you. And then you see where you are right now. I can give an example here. So in terms of physical health, for me, a 10 looks like allocating at least 45 minutes to 1 hour every single day for physical exercise. That could be in the form of going to the gym or going rock climbing or going for a dance class, and being confident that what I'm eating is healthy and also actually trying to eat healthy. So this is how I would classify my 10 as on physical health. So like this, you sit down and you think about what 10 means for you in all of these different, very important verticals that complete your life. And then you rate yourself on where you are. So this is the step 1 in how I'm thinking of setting my goals for the upcoming year. And once I go through that exercise, it's not you do it once and give yourself a few days, get back to it and see if you still feel the same. Because I do think our mood might shift within one day to the next. But after a certain point, you realize that I feel comfortable with what I've currently created right now. So once you have that, the next question to ask, which would help you build the goals for next year, is if, assuming by the end of 2022, I have reached 10 on 10 on this specific quadrant, what have I accomplished that helps me say that I'm 10 on 10 right now? So going off of the same example of physical health, a few things that I'm thinking of for next year is, number 1, really trying to make exercise a part of my daily routine, either signing up for a gym membership or signing up for a climbing membership. That's number 1. Number 2 would be taking a look at my current food habits and understanding really what kind of nutrients I need on a daily basis. So maybe taking a course or reading a book on this topic, going for a workshop, could be in any of the formats. And finally, making changes to my food plan, because I'm currently part of a community house where it's me and 15 other people, and we all purchase together once a week. So based on what food I want to eat, I could change and tell my preferences so they could change the food plan on a weekly basis. So as I do all of this, you can see how I would reach that bigger goal of being confident in what I'm eating healthy, and going to the gym every day. This is one example of how I will be approaching setting goals for different quadrants in life. And it's not a very simple exercise, because, really you're asked to think about your life and really take a hard look at certain things which you might not want to look at. If you feel like you've been procrastinating so much on, say, publishing a book, then it's not fun to just write down on paper that I am 3 on 10 on this quadrant. So it's a difficult exercise, but I do think it's necessary if you want to keep moving the needle.
Yeah, I think in Soundarya, that's the biggest thing where we are also, something that we've been thinking about is the discovery aspect, the self-assessment, which is, knowing where I am, and that awareness of knowing where I am, and then knowing that, it's an inefficient state, or it's an area of prioritization for me to work on. That's the biggest barrier to adopting any one of these frameworks.
It is. So what do you think? What do you think could help you reduce this barrier?
So that's the way you framed it, very good. So this is some of the things that we are actually trying to do. Like, if I were to bring it back to an analogy that we used in some of the startups that we built as an example, right? One is like, the one startup that we build is in the cloud security space. We always tell everybody is like, you have very inefficient cloud state, you have so many cloud services, there's so much risk, and then you need to go fix it, and then, you need to get into this stuff. Nobody would actually go do it because they don't have an awareness of what is the quantification, what is the problem, what is the quantification of the problem, how serious it is, for me to go act on it. So the way we had to go break that barrier is to build a discovery tool where we simply go and scan their environment and this stuff, and then present is like, this is where you are, these are the 8 dimensions of your cloud world, and then this is this is this is, then it is something that is in front of you, and then you put a prioritization, and then go do this, right? When you present something like it. So one of the things that I think a template could be, one is we can automate it perhaps, right? We can automate it from, like, for example, take the health as a dimension. You can perhaps, take it from your doctor's reports, or, if you're using an Apple Watch or any kind of those things that serves as an input, and then basically says like, like what a doctor visit is going to do, right? If you are getting close to 50, and if you're, this much weight, and if this is what it is, then you need to make, out of all the other things, make health be the #1 goal. Don't look at anything else. So, so because otherwise what happens is, this can only be adopted by those people who are like so self-aware, so driven, they know how to parse this entire thing. And when somebody is of that caliber, you probably don't even need a framework like this.
That's a very interesting point that I haven't thought of, because I've only thought of this from the perspective of my life. And for someone who might not be maybe as self-aware as someone should be to perform this, I think the next best solution would be to have an accountability buddy, or someone with whom you're doing this together, which is something I'm planning to do myself, is actually work with one of my friends, and we both will ask each other questions to unearth certain insights. And it seems like you have the best group for this possible here, of all the people who are part of this group who can help each other go through this.
Actually,
sorry, go ahead.
No, please, Savitha.
I like this wheel, life wheel. I have used it before, and once you know what it does, you don't need the framework, but initially it helps as a starter, somebody who has never done it before, and being authentic. Like, it's easy to know what you don't want, but it's a tough question is to answer what you want. So I think having this wheel, and when it's in black and white and it's staring at you, and you have to be authentic, and you have to answer it, like, because it's your life, right? This is your life wheel. There are many areas of your life. It doesn't have to be career. It just can be just a small thing as a laundry. How do you solve it can be broken down into, this wheel can be dissected in many, many ways. Just let's not make it into a huge deal as like just spirituality, image, or finance. Yes, that is important, but somebody, a stay-at-home mom, like, she might say, I feel I have no purpose in life sometimes, right? I do the mundane thing. But even for them, I think using this wheel to see where, like, YEC is all about creating, being an entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is nothing but finding efficient way, or finding a solution. So I think this wheel, or any tool should be used for the smallest thing you can think of, and it will still work. As Srini said, you might hold its hand initially, but over a few years or after some time using it, then you don't need to use it, and you can create a community and create as a community buddy. For yoga, Uma is my community, accountability buddy. Sorry, yeah. So that we decided we'll do together in that way. So like me and Kanika, during summertime, we were saying, okay, we'll get up in the morning and we'll go for a walk in the morning. So yeah, I think over time, but this tool, it helped me a lot. So I would suggest people to use it to the mundanest thing. Like, don't worry about if you don't have career, you don't have cloud, you don't have sun, moon, doesn't matter. Use it for the mundanest thing and it will still help you and answer difficult questions in your life sometimes. Yeah.
So I think, Savitha, this is so profound. And then the reason why I love actually, I'm so caught with this, the My Life Wheel framework. In fact, I'm trying to include that in the YEC, if possible, in our IOM kind of stuff. And the serendipitous thing is, it basically says my personal excellence, which is essentially the whole mission of YEC. How do we empower somebody to design excellence in their own world? That is literally the YEC's mission purpose. We call it as design excellence in your world, and we define the world into like 4 or 5 different worlds. And here is eight kind of views into your world. And there could be any number of things. You can, as Savitha said, put your laundry as if that's the most important thing, you can put that as a dimension, and then you can solve it. Now, the key thing for me is, I agree with you, answer the questions authentically. Do we know what questions to be asked?
Sorry, are you asking Savitha or
any one of them? Like, for example, health, right? So
Soundarya, I want you to answer this. Yeah. Please go ahead.
The health is like, whether it's a buddy, like 0 to 10, we all have certain representation of what 10 means and what 0 means. And you define what a 10 for you, right? You define a 10 for you, right? So depending upon what is the levels 1 to 10 for you, and then that basically then comes down to is like what questions to ask, so that you be accurate about the self-awareness. So are there any templates that are available, like say the personal excellence thing, that basically allows somebody to objectively look at it? It's like, if your goal is like 5 based on whatever, now here's a question, here is a question, here is a question, so that you can actually go answer that for you.
So you made question of why did you choose this number, or helping them choose the number itself?
Let me rephrase it. So how do you know in the scale, where do you stand, basically? Like, how do you be authentic and say, okay, I'm at 4 or 2? Is that what you're trying to say, Srini?
Yeah, that is number one. And across, for example, forget about, that's number one. Number two is, if I were to pick finance, do people know what questions to be asked? To measure
so
their
is
own
there a survey template rather, right? Like
you need to set
survey
an end result. You need to set the end result and work backwards for that. That's my approach. Yeah.
But even the end result is you only operate from the known state. Like, if somebody is not aware of what a financial well-being actually represents, all I know about is how to put money in the bank account, and then your end result will also like, I want to get $10,000 more in my bank account. But that doesn't really represent excellence in the holistic world, perhaps.
Just like Soundarya addressed just now, like she wants to do rock climbing. So she need to hire experts in that area. Like, if I want to get to a certain weight goal or certain things, you need to hire experts in that area, or do more research, spend more time in that area to get knowledge in that relation. So I think having the end result and working backwards and see what resources you need in order to achieve that. That's my approach. Soundarya, you have any other techniques that you would use?
It is a good question. And I'm thinking right now, because I am so used to this technique, for me, I have a pretty good idea of, if I sit and think about it, I'll have a good idea of what my 10 looks like for all of the areas I would put under my life wheel. But how do you help someone else see the best potential they can see in the 10? And seems like Rajesh has a response. Go ahead, Rajesh.
Go ahead, Rajesh.
What I'm saying is, it is not an easy answer, because sometimes, people don't know their true potential themselves.
Yeah.
So what happens is their biggest goal may be falling short of what their true potential can actually make them achieve. That is where you get members, mentors, personal board of advisors, all of them, to make sure that the goals are stretched enough that they grow while they're going. Otherwise, they may fall short of it even with the best goal setting. It may be just sort of slightly above average. So only when you pick the path that has the highest growth of their power, which is capacity to get meaningful things done, then it's meaningful.
So well said. If you only set the goals in the known world, it's bounded. It's within the realm of what you know. But there are so many realms of excellence, like take any one dimension of the 8 that you may not be aware of. Like, take finance as an example. Like, put the thing. Finance is like, there is crypto, there is real estate, there is mining. I mean, it's like, for whatever the thing that if your goal is like, I want to grow my financial well-being and so on and so forth. Many of us may not even be aware of that there is a domain called crypto. Not that, we should go in, but I'm just being aware of it. Like, for example, fitness. If all the people know about is, I want to run, but then they may not know that there is an emotional well-being, there is yoga, or there is, rock climbing that you could do, or other dimensions happen. So how do we allow people to, actually, the reason why this is interesting to me is there are so many startups now are coming into this personal excellence world. In fact, one of the Greylock startup, just for weight lossness, helping people to lose weight, and they kind of instrumented, and then they mapped them to this, and they're almost like at a few $1 billion market cap right now. So this entire domain that you have taken on, Soundarya, is so profound, helping people quarterback their own excellence in a 360-degree way with a systemic framework is something that we can actually do. But I think what Rajesh said is, if you only set the goals based on what you know, you might be short selling yourself.
But I feel, I feel you don't have to, like, say, you don't have to do crypto, you don't have to do everything in the market to achieve your financial goal. Take one or two you're comfortable with, and then focus on it, and then work on it. Instead of like saying, I want to diversify so much just getting into it, then you'll be overwhelmed. So if you know just real estate, just do real estate at that point of time, and slowly what you build on it, once you get comfortable with it, then move on to the next window. By going into, like, let's say for taking finance as like, I want to do crypto, I want to do real estate, I want to do every area of life all at one shot, then you're just, not that it's impossible, but I think you're spreading too thin, and then your focus will be lost, because everything takes energy. Everything you invest in takes energy. So I think you should be mindful of where your energy needs to go. And as Kanika is saying here, you need to create short-term and long-term goals within that.
Correct.
Yeah. So from that, Soundarya, please continue. I think we don't want to hijack your slides. Please continue.
You guys made me think how, because in the course, one of the first modules is about helping people fill in their life field. And I'm sure that some people are going to ask the same questions that you asked, which is, how do I know where to rate myself? What does a 10 look like? So I think the difference there is, because it's in a cohort, I'm trying to think of how can I help each other such that they can be each other's mentors and accountability buddies. So that is an interesting problem statement that I'm going to be looking at. So, and I think, I do want to move on to the next step here.
One point that I love your cohort is because it's a very practical way of actually helping with this. I think if you can actually pick a cohort who has a little bit better of an expertise in each one of them, then I think that might be a better way to kind of help you set the goals. I think that's probably
so absolutely
that you recruit more cohorts who is the expert, who you think better than you. That's all you need to look for. Yeah.
So let's assume that in an ideal scenario, we have set our goals. We have, at the very least, we have a life field for ourselves with 8 to 10 quadrants that's unique to us. And we rated ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10. And finally, we have also imagined, and we have an idea of what 10 looks like for each of these quadrants. And we have written down the projects that we'll be working on as of what we know now to reach that 10. It's also important to know that there's so much that happens in a year that things could go a different way than you'd imagine. So this is not a one-time investment. You are going to be looking at this, as I'm going to show you, every single week as you build your planner. So if you do feel like you're working on a project which is not giving you energy, then it's important that you honor yourself and just tell yourself that I'll stop this and pick up something else that comes along the way. So it's a very fluid system. It's not rigid. Step 2 that I wanted to mention is, once you set your goals, instead of keeping it inside your head, offload it into a system. And I have italicized the word system here because the system I'm about to show is very unique to me, but it doesn't mean that everyone has to follow the system. It's just something that I've found great value in thinking about my goals as. So to introduce the system, I like to do a visualization exercise for which I need all of you to close your eyes, because I think it'll help you as I go through this exercise better. I call this the life garden framework, which is why you also see some leaves on the screen here. Okay, sit comfortably, close your eyes, and just imagine that you're standing in front of 3 beautiful gardens. And these gardens together represent your life. The garden on the left, called personal growth, represents everything related to you and your personal growth as you go through your life. The garden on your right represents relationships, all the relationships you have in your life, with your family, with your children, partner, your best friends, mentors, acquaintances, everyone that you have come in contact with in your life. And finally, the garden right in front of you is your contribution garden. This encompasses all the projects that you're working on, that you worked on to contribute back into the community. So let's just take a short stroll into the garden on the left, which is our personal growth garden. So imagine yourself just walking slowly onto the grass into that garden. And just like you would see in a garden in real life, this imaginary garden also has trees inside of it, beautiful trees. And these trees are the different areas that complete that garden of personal growth. So you might see trees on mental health. You might see a tree on health and fitness. You might see another tree on hobbies. You might see another tree on traveling. So these are all the trees that you're growing and nurturing to continue cultivating that garden of personal growth. Now, walk closer to the tree on mental health, for example. So as you walk closer and closer, you might notice that this tree on mental health has certain branches under it. And these branches represent the projects that you're currently working towards to grow that tree. So this tree on mental health contains branches such as meditate every day, journal once a week, read a book on mindfulness every month, attend therapy sessions once every 2 weeks. This could look differently for you than it does for me. But together, these branches keep growing that tree. And as you walk even closer to that tree, you might notice that these branches have leaves on them. And these leaves represent the tasks that you perform every single day to keep growing that branch, which then grows that tree, which in turn grows the garden itself. So a leaf under the branch of meditation might be sitting down to meditate for 30 minutes every day, or sitting down to read for 1 hour every week, a book on mindfulness. Okay, so now slowly start taking a step back as you walk out of this garden, away from this garden, and come back to your initial spot of where you were as you were watching all 3 gardens of your life. Now, please open your eyes. What I just made you go through is a visualization exercise, which really I found it very helpful to think of my life as a series of gardens. And I began doing this about a year ago. I don't remember how I began doing this, but I remember reading about gardening sometime early 2021. And it just hit me that why don't I think of my life as gardens? Because it's aesthetically pleasing to think of your life that way, first of all. And just like how a garden has hierarchy of gardens, trees, branches, leaves, and seeds, you can use this hierarchy to connect the things that you're working on every single day to some of these bigger areas in life. And also, just like how a tree begins with just a simple seed in the root, I think it taught me patience, that the things that I'm working on today will eventually mature one day and become a full branch or a full tree. So what I made you go through is a theoretical framework. However, it might stop being theory and just knowledge if you don't put this into practice in some system. And this is the system that I built on top of Notion using this life garden framework. So when I show this to you for the first time, it might seem overwhelming and just a lot of content. So just know that it took me a long time to get it to this state though. Great. So in Notion, for those of you who are familiar with the tool itself, the 4 hierarchy that I made you go through of gardens, trees, branches, and leaves are simply databases, tables. You can see that the garden of life or gardens of life, I have 3 gardens. I call them the me, myself, and I garden, which is all about me. The people garden, which is about the people in my life. And then the society garden, which is about my community, society, country, and the world at large. The trees that I have under these gardens are very similar to what I just told you, which is under the personal growth garden, I have trees on mental and physical fitness, hobbies, mind garden, which is about me learning something new, traveling, and so on. The trees under the people garden, I have 2 trees, family and relationships. I just think of relationships as everything other than my family, just to keep it simple for myself. You could have friends, mentors, and so on. And finally, the society garden is about how I contribute back into the world. So for me, this comes in the form of mainly content creation, courses, books, passion projects, hopefully a startup someday. And then the branches table breaks down these trees into the projects that I'm working on. So one example of a project is launching my course. That was a project under this tree of contemplation. Or journaling is a project for me under mental and physical fitness. Exercise, learning something, building secondary revenue. So while I do have 46 branches, it does not mean I'm working on 46 projects right now. It's projects that got added throughout the year. And at most, I'm probably working on 6 to 7 projects on a given week. including projects on taking care of myself, being in touch with family and friends. Finally, the leaves table contain the tasks that we all perform: booking an appointment, publishing an article, or talking to parents, weekly recurring tasks, and so on. So this is my way of offloading everything that I want to do in my life into a system where it's structured. Because if I simply dump all of my goals and never look at it, I'm not going to achieve it. At least I am not going to achieve it. So it was necessary for me to build a framework that made sense to me. And I've found that this Life Garden framework has also helped many other people over this year who I've told about this to, who have found this helpful in their life, which is why I decided to use this in my course as the core framework. I'm going to pause there for questions.
So not questions. I think there's a lot of potential. Number one, I commend you for the way how you come up with this metaphor of gardens. Like, I mean, even the first slide that you had, more time, and you had tree. It's just like, you can actually grow.
Yeah.
The tree grows, right? There is no upper bound to it. You can make, and this is a beautiful way. In fact, as you were explaining, my brain was going through different things. I was seeing that there could be nurseries, like somebody could actually sell fitness trees, or with all the leaves, and with a framework that you can actually do that. And then there could be a marketplace of, like nurseries and stuff. So this could be a fantastic startup. So if you ever want to do a company, please make me come work for you in some capacity.
Well, I'll be honored. Thanks so much. I'm really...
Sorry, please go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just really happy that it resonated with you.
The thing is, like the thing, right? You came up with your own, you imagined in your personal life, and then you basically came up with the tree and branches and the leaves that you codified. But that is the difficult process. Like, somebody would have to know what could be the steps and so on. But somebody like when I'm doing my own gardening, I don't have all this awareness. So what do? I go to a nursery and get the plants and I do something. So there could be somebody who could be selling a tree of, hey, here is a fitness tree that you would want to come and this stuff. Then it comes up with the steps and playbooks and all that kind of stuff, right? So this could usher into a marketplace that not only your own thing, but people could, intermediaries, and create a huge ecosystem of building beautiful gardens of life in the entire world.
I'm really glad you think so. Well, I see Rajesh asked a question to discuss with your mentors at key decision. What am I not seeing? It's a very good question. Something that I know, Rajesh, you love asking yourself a lot. I'm starting to ask myself. Any other questions on just this framework itself? If not, I'll move on to the next step.
This
Soundarya, this is
beautiful.
great.
Yeah. Sorry.
Hey, no worries. Hey, Soundarya, I find this like amazing, very, very timely session, especially as we are feeling overwhelmed that, hey, this year is over and the next year is here. Or we prepared for it. So thank you so much for sharing this. I am new to the whole Notion app, and also I'm gonna really benefit from it. I had a quick question for you. So all the goals that you have here, right? Like, the leaves, branches, how can we convert these goals into time-bound tasks? Like, can you elaborate on how you are putting a timeline around this?
I will say that I did not put a timeline as much as I measure the progress of the things that I'm working on. And you can see that there are some branches which are completed, which is, oh, yeah, I guess you could see them. So for the most part, I have made good progress on most of the branches, but there are also branches where you can see I've made 0 progress or 5% progress. And at some point I would decide that I don't want to work on this branch anymore. So I would just never it, meaning I'm never going to work on this, at least for this year. So I'm still, I keep aside one day to revamp my entire workflow every 3 or 4 months. So it's been about 5 months since I revamped it the last time. And one of the things I am thinking of for next year is how to add a beginning and ending date for a project. Because right now I haven't added that myself. So can you repeat your question again?
So my question was around how we can make these tasks time bound, right? I think you pretty much answered it, right? Like how, yeah, we have a starting point, but how do we define the end point and how do we track the progress? But as in how you were demonstrating that, pretty much like I get a better
Yes.
understanding that this app can help us do that as well.
One thought there is the way I was doing it this year was when I created a branch, I would just write down the vision for that branch or the purpose and vision, meaning for vision for me for launching my course was to launch 2 successful cohorts and generate some net income from that. So this is a very subjective evaluation because it's your life. And I know that can get hard, but you can also look at it from the easier side, which is that you can make changes to this anytime you want. And as long as you're staying honest with yourself, which even I'm not all the time, or as long as you're staying honest with yourself 80% of the time, because the real goal is to make progress on your goals. So if you're not making progress, but you're marking it as 100%, eventually you're going to realize that you're lying to yourself and you're not going to be happy about it. So I think it is a subjective evaluation, but some goals could be objective. One example I look at is journaling. You see how I can see total days where I've spent time journaling. Notion has this feature where I can do a roll up and sum all the leaves which have the word journal. So this way I can objectively see that I've spent 25 days journaling this year. So
Nice. Amazing.
Yeah, this I wish I can even I'm thinking of a better framework for this, and I'll be coming up with something as I go through my planning for next year first, and then using that in my course to teach other people.
Awesome. This is great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Any other questions?
Somebody who's not used Notion before, I think it will be very overwhelming initially. For me to use, I had to go through many YouTube videos before I could understand how beneficial it would be for me and like how I'm going to use. I don't use it for tracking. I mainly use it for, as I said, second brain, like whatever YouTube videos or like, saving them, like, where the source is. That's how I use it. Another simple method, which in this community, some of us we use is vision board. So put at the beginning of the year, let's say next year, as Kiran said, like one of my goal is to get a certification in yoga. So get a picture online or any magazine, cut it and make a board. Like it doesn't have to be a fancy one, and just put it on the. What happens is you will start seeing any action. Will it align with this one? Because it's constantly in your face. It should be somewhere where it's visible every day. Like I used to keep it at work because that's where I would spend most of my time when I was actually going to office. So keep it somewhere where you see by the beginning of the day and the end of the day, so that you will see what actions today which actually align with that picture. A lot of us don't want to write or expose ourselves as this is what I want to do. So picture means a lot of things for you. Others don't have to know what it is, right? So Notion can be very scary initially, but definitely encourage to use it in many ways than just tracking. It has Absolutely. A lot of good features where I mainly use as a second brain, like so that I don't forget where I got the source from, what's the book I read or something like that. Yeah.
Yes, and if I may just respond to that. That's exactly why I hesitate to show this to people who haven't used Notion much, because when someone sees this, they feel, well, this is too much and I don't want to build this right now. But it's also important to note that it all begins with an empty page, and it's a step-by-step process. So you'll have so much fun going through the process because you're really thinking about your life so much and becoming extremely self-aware of all the areas in your life. And I love this life garden metaphor more than anything else because it shows me if I'm balanced or not. it's easy for us to think of planning only for the career part of our life. We might not be intentionally allocating time to, for example, spend time with our close friends or catch up with our mentors, take care of ourselves, our mental health, engage in hobbies. So once you really put everything down there, then you can clearly see that every week you're spending 90% of your time just on work and 10% is going into everything else. So I have one final thing to show, but we're also at time. So let me know if I should go ahead and show that. I can also pause here.
Why didn't you show that, and then we'll do the Q&A, and if you are okay with that, we would also love for you to come back for a follow-on session too, and just to wrap it up. Yeah.
Okay, great. In that case, let me. Oh, this is just the animation that I made. Okay, we don't need to. I need to go through the entire thing to go to the next slide.
This one is just a marketplace. I think this needs to be built in like a big company right now. Rajesh, would you agree?
So these are just, I wanted to mention 3 reasons why it helps. Okay, now step 3 of this is reaching your goals, because the whole point of all of the things that we're doing here, setting goals, offloading, building the system, is to accomplish our goals and have a fulfilling, meaningful life. So this garden itself, if you build it, it'll be useful just as a one-time investment, but it won't help you with your weekly planner unless you build a weekly planner. So I really think of my garden, my weekly planning and weekly retrospective as this trio of pages on Notion, which together help me accomplish what I need to accomplish. So the weekly retrospective is really a container space that gives me a chance to reflect on the past week. Meaning every Sunday night, I would keep aside about 60 to 90 minutes to sit down and reflect on the past week and plan the upcoming week. When I'm saying reflection, for me, it's answering 3 questions. Number 1, what got done last week? So Notion has pretty powerful filters and sorts. So you can look at just what you worked on the past week here in terms of projects and tasks. And next question is, how was the time spent? I'm a huge fan of time blocking on my calendar. Seems like some of you are as well. So as I block the time on my calendar and input that into Notion, I can see how I'm spending time across the different gardens or verticals of my life here. And finally, third question is, what went well and what can I try for next week? So here's where I would write down some qualitative feedback of these things went well. I'm really happy I accomplished this, but maybe for next week, I could try something slightly different. Once I'm done with that, I would switch to the mode of planning, which is looking forward. So here, first take a look at all of the current branches and see which ones I would like to work on. And when I say branches, I just mean projects. And then leaves, meaning tasks. So anytime you think of a task, you would just come and add it to this table, which I just call coming up table. So you can see that I have a bunch of tasks here, which it doesn't necessarily mean I need to work on them next week, but sometime in the future. So it gives you that peace of mind that anytime you think of something, come add it here. And you know you're going to look at it every single week. So you will never forget working on something. And finally, once I'm done adding everything to the upcoming week, this is how a week looks like. So really, the garden is something that I'm building for an entire year. But what I'm looking at on a weekly basis are these 2 pages. And this is what I look at on a daily basis, is Monday, Tuesday until Sunday. What am I working on? Right now, the table is quite empty because we're at the end of this week. So I've already closed some tasks, so you don't see them here. But there's still a few more things that I want to do today, like journaling, finishing to set up my room for something, talking to parents, and so on. So this way, you don't just set your goals and offload them, but you actually reach your goals using a very feedback loop enriched planner, such that every week you know what you're doing. and you keep making incremental changes based on past week to make sure the next week is more balanced and productive. Finally, this is just, if you have any, like, you can get so much more detail if you just visit the MoreTimeEveryday.com website. I've put a lot more of what I just spoke about in there. And not that you guys need to email me, you can just reach out to me on WhatsApp directly, but I just put it down anyway. So I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, when I saw your website, first thing which caught my eye was get more time every day to do what you love. I think that's the fundamental question everybody should answer. Actually, what do you love to do when you have free time? I mean, nobody should be ashamed. If they want to sit down and scroll through the Instagram for 3 hours, that is the important thing.
Right.
They should put down that. That's what I want to do. I want to just cuddle up in the bed and just read a book. That is important for that person. So I think answering that question, what do you want to do with the time? Because I think we are constantly trading like our things to do with time. Time is what is a currency, right? So I think, how can I increase my time currency is my effort constantly. And I think once you answer that, then you will see where your time is draining, right? Like you can actually review your, like Notion. Actually, I use Notion, but the way you have built is amazing. I wish you could build something for me, but I don't think I can use it this detailed oriented. But I think, but what you have created is amazing. But I love your, as soon as I opened your website, that's one thing caught my eye. So yeah, thank you so much. It's very nice. Yeah.
So love it. And Soundarya, when you, on that note, like what Savitha asked, like the Puja's garden, can somebody, take your garden, with your data anonymized? Like, for example, in other words, can I bootstrap it in a Puja's garden? And then, if I want, I can rearrange some of my branches and my leaves and a little bit more, but at least I have so much of, is there an IP there? It has to be an IP.
Yeah, the template is available, I think, but I don't know if she's sharing it. She has to share it for us to get the template.
Yeah, so there is no IP as such, but I have created a basic template that anyone can use to build their own garden. So I can share that with you if you guys are interested at all.
I think
Sure.
people are willing to. I mean, you have one thing, but like even some of the, the way you defined every half an hour, like call parents and everything is. I used to remember my daughter Shave used to have like every week. Is like when I used to go visit her in the college, she used to have every half an hour budgeted for the next week. And I'm like, I was so scared. But it's like I used to run away from all this stuff, right? But I think
yes.
So blocking is a method. I think Elon Musk uses that, right? Like it's calendar blocking. It's quite popular actually.
I really wish Notion and Google Calendar had a robust integration, so it just automatically gets updated in Notion. But I know people who block on a 30-minute basis on the calendar proactively. I do it differently, where I go through the day and then I retroactively block how I spent the day. So it's slightly different than how some other people might do it. But and then finally input the total hours into Notion end of the week. And so it can be scary when you see a calendar filled with all of these blocks. But once again, I think if you break it down, it might take a few minutes a day. So some things which seem scary might not take as much time as you think.
Yours is more of a reflective way of blocking a calendar.
More reflective than proactive.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking, because that gives insights on how to use your time going forward, as opposed to you learn from it. When you block it, you may honor it or not honor it, but if you don't have that close the loop of reflection and learn from it, you don't actually be a better planner. Yes, that's actually a good way of doing it. Right.
Simple other method I use is like take a piece of or a notebook and then divide into two. So when the beginning of the day, when you get up, write down all the things you need to do that day, like what you want to achieve or what are you want to work on those goals, and put a time bound, just a vague, it doesn't have to be exactly. And then at the end of the night, you can see, did you actually finish? So that's a simple way of reflecting in people who don't want to use Notion.
Soundarya, I think so. I think this is the right journey that you're on. Have you thought about any of these integrations, like watch? Because at the end of the day, the world is moving into like the world of assistance, right? How do we allow people to achieve excellence in their life with constant instrumentation, right? Right now, I'm doing manual data feed, so it's like the automatic sensorification of collecting the data and then you're guiding with you.
Honestly, I really wish it was possible. It's unless I sit down and learn to write code myself and connect Google Calendar with Notion, I don't see it. That's the biggest requirement for me, at least right now. Since I do time blocking and I want that time to be back in Notion, I just want automatically as I block here, it should attach itself to the right leaf in my Notion database. But I couldn't find it as of now.
So that is what
Notion has calendar?
Hmm.
Notion has calendar as well, right?
They do, but Google Calendar is where everything resides in terms of your meetings, calls. And so what I guess I'm looking for is when I block my calendar and title it journaling, for example, I want the journaling leaf in Notion to automatically say 1 hour. And that is not possible today, that level of integration.
That's a fantastic thing. So one of the things when we were talking, and I'll discuss with you next week when I'm in the Bay Area, we were actually, one of the thoughts that I had is YEC, we wanted to build it like a software company, where my end goal is to have a personal assistant that is basically doing a discovery of everybody, like basically discover your own garden and then guide them to a better garden in an automatic way. And in fact, so that you have your own an assistant bot that is actually guiding you through, because otherwise, people might not be as diligent and as capable as you and Savitha Garu and Shravya Garu and Kiran. Kiran is also made of the same DNA. So where you can actually quarterback your data and all that stuff. So for some of us, we are not as gifted. We need some assistant.
Oh,
right. No, and then here's a magic, and I'm going to stop talking about. Then someday, all this intellect is going to go. We're going to operate with an intuition where you don't need any tracking. So that's the ultimate purpose of yoga. When you have your yoga tree grows in your garden, in a big way, then you don't need to monitor all these notions, decisions. We just operate with it.
That's true.
Right? I hope that it really works. Otherwise, I'll be scared. I will be completely left out in the system. Yeah,
I do think this is not for everyone, really. It's only for people who have a lot going on in their life that if they don't have a system, it feels too chaotic. And if someone has a very unidimensional goal in life, and that's all they're working towards, and they really don't care for tracking, then there is no need to do any of this.
And what about those people who are multidimensional and they don't have a system to track, and then they fall off and then they get an arrest warrant? Sorry, that's a joke.
I mean, basically every action has a consequence right here. So that's what I think Soundarya is trying to say, like, you create an action plan and then there is a consequence. Based on that, is like there's a good consequence and there's a bad consequence. So, but I think without any system, be it Kiran, be it Rupa, Kanika, we all function in a different system. We all have some system, which may not be elaborated, may not be small, but either it's here or it's on a piece of paper at the end of the receipt or something, but there is a system. And I think we crave that system somehow to, again, because our fight is not fight, like in our effort is to get the time to do things what we want to love, what we love. So I think if you keep that as a focus, I am doing this to get more time to do what I love, I think it won't be a pain process. It will be more of a, hey, I know there is a cake at the end of the tunnel, or like there is some, yeah, I think focus should be on like getting that currency, which is called time. I think if we are focused on that, I think the time spent, like you spend a lot of time on arranging everything, like, weekly, daily, and bits and pieces. because your end goal is to get more time to do things what you love to do. So I think that's where
so well said, really.
keeping that as a focus is very key. Otherwise, everything becomes, people might feel, oh, what you're doing is overwhelming. But I think if you come back to that fundamental question, well, I want to do what I love. That can be as simple as cuddling with a book. If I want to do that, where all I can trade my cards with and get that time.
Right.
Yeah. So
and I also think the process of tracking has been really a great way to discover myself, because really what you're doing is understanding how you think, how you spend your time, what gives you energy, and you just get better and better at knowing yourself as you keep going through this process. Because on a weekly basis, you're looking back to see what have you spent most time on, how did you evaluate this week. So if you realize that you spent 90% time on something, but you think that your week was terrible, clearly whatever you spend time on is not helping you be happy. So it's really just a process of self-discovery as you keep going through this. So I just like to say that tracking is less about squeezing the most out of your time and more about discovering as much as you can.
Correct. In fact, there is a corollary in the YEC. We have this framework to design excellence in the world. I call that as an IOAM framework, which is like insights to outcomes. Insights is know where you are, and then know where you are, and then outcomes is design excellence. Design, like, what is that excellence means for you, and then we have a structured way of it. And then that is more of what I refer to as a think muscle. It is like visualizing your life. That is like system thinking, right? Then comes is like the execution muscle. We call that as an AM, which is the actions and metrics. Now come up with a plan on what actions are you going to get to the excellence that you design for yourself, and then how do you measure it? And this is a continuous process. The more you are actually measuring, then you have a new insight where you are, what is working, what's not working, and then based on that, you go back and refine your excellence goal. Right? Sometimes you might be ahead of your goal, or you're not doing it, or the process may not be working. The action plan and metrics, you're doing it, and that is how we were trying to empower somebody to design excellence. The key thing is, what I was looking for is, while this is a framework, I was looking for a systemized playbook. One is your guidance is one of that systemized playbook, right?
Right.
But eventually what happens is, the more you do this, then the intuition builds up in people. So you don't need to track as much. And then you become very naturally, because once you get once the 10,000 hours kind of a muscle comes in, you don't need to measure as much, but you can still apply this form to grow proficiency in another dimension that you don't want to get. Like fitness, if it's a new thing, there you have to build that muscle where you're naturally, it's programmed into your memory. So, but I think this is a beautiful framework that I would want to see how, with your permission, and we'll figure it out, because this is a right way of looking at life, with all the positive trees and gardens, because our life is essentially growing gardens and trees. And the time is essentially what? Time is not just the time. Time is power, your capability. That's how you become infinite. The more time that you create, the more dimensions you explore, more excellence, and then that's how you become infinite. So it's so serendipitous how, for me, without planning, accidentally things happen, right? When you come in and YEC, I look for something, and then you come back with a playbook. So which is, so Savitha garu, thank you so much for arranging this session. Beautiful session.
Thank you, Soundarya, for, let's know a little bit more about Soundarya. If you have a few more minutes, Soundarya, I know you have written a book, many books I've heard. If you can name few. Name few. And also any book recommendation that actually made an impact on your life that you would ask. Yeah,
absolutely. And I wrote one book called Admitted, which is probably the most proudest accomplishment of mine so far. The other book that I wrote is a really short book. I wouldn't really call it an entire book myself. In terms of books I would recommend, I thought about this question before the call. I think talking about this topic that we just spoke, which is all about self-discovery, planning, productivity, the first book I would recommend is really this book called How to Take Smart Notes. And it's not a very catchy title because it might seem like it's just telling me how to take notes. But really, this book helped me think about learning from an entirely new standpoint of teaching me the importance of having a system and workflow, and how once you have that established, your productivity can shoot through the roof. So it's one of the analogies that the book's author talks about is how even the fastest car is not going to be as fast if it's running on a crappy road. So even if you as a person are extremely productive when you sit down to do something, you're focused, you cannot get much done if you don't have your system and environment set up that way. And I don't just mean inside a computer, but also around you. You gave me a great idea, Savitha, which is having affirmations and vision board in front of you every day, and how that can have a positive effect, or having plants in your room, and starting your day with a simple prayer. So all of these things can add up to so much. So really, the book taught me the importance of systems, and I think it's definitely one of my favorite books.
Thank you. I would like to ask anybody like Kiran, Kanika, or Ramakanji, anybody, anything like what Soundarya mentioned, if you have created some system that you can share with us. It can be the smallest system, but I know it's tailor-made for you guys. But if you can share, and we can probably include in our system, or like that you got time because of using that system. You got more time, and you were able to use that time to do what you love. I would really like to call out Rupa, my good friend of 20 odd years, is here. Finally, she made it here. Rupa, we have walked through a long journey together. Rup? I don't know if she's able to talk.
I think she's on
Maybe
mute.
she's not next to her phone.
You're on mute, just in case. Okay.
Hi, Savi. Because you asked, maybe there's something I could share.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Again, it's not a very mature product that I have done, but I just
No,
started doing that last year.
Yeah, I'm looking for the mundane thing, actually.
Right. So, this is a concept that I picked up at work, right? Like, now everybody's doing OKRs, objectives and key results. So we do this all the time at work. So I'm like, maybe I can apply that to my, personal or, family goals as well. So last year I just started drafting. Basically, it's nothing compared to the very detailed workflow that Soundarya showed, but I just started using OKR framework to understand what my objectives are and what should be my key results to measure my, like what I'm trying to really get done, right? So I started doing that last year, sorry. So I didn't do it again at a weekly or a regular basis, but still it was a good checkpoint for me, like month after month, to see that, hey, these were the things that I thought about at the beginning of the year, but maybe I lost track. So let me try to get back on track and try to address them on a quarterly basis, if nothing else. So I just wanted to see like if OKRs is something that you thought about or connect with.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one other thing is on the OKRs thing, and Soundarya, I didn't know, when you keep track of your thing, would a Kanban board be helpful?
It depends on, well, I have a weekly dashboard, which is kind of like a Kanban board. It depends on how you define it.
I think, the Kanban board, like again, at work and some of the work that we do, a Kanban board also gives a linear prioritization. When you have so many things, like, if you only have one thing to do, what is the one thing that you want to do? So the Kanban board, that's a simplistic way of organizing all the things, with this, what is in progress. And so when you have 8 different dimensions, when you want to tackle all of them, if you only have one thing to do, which one would you prioritize? So it actually brings that element of forceful prioritization in a linear way that also helps people. So some of these additional tools as part of your second brain. And one of the other things that we do is when you do the retro, there is a framework that we say is like start, stop, continue, which I started using in a thing, which is like start with celebrating, continue, like what are the victories, and then absolutely stop, like what are the things that are not working. That's also a good start, stop, continue as a way of when you do the retro. So it actually helps with adding, either pruning some leaves or adding branches and then adding new things. But again, that's a framework that we use at work, which I'm now trying to do that in some of my initiatives in the personal life. The start, stop, continue kind of stuff.
And added to Sriniji's thing, I use the mind mapping as well. So I definitely do the, and thanks Soundarya for this wheel of life stuff. And it's been, I think, almost a year and a half or more. I almost forgot about this because of COVID. So this is one thing I introduce for every batch in 10 weeks. The first class I would introduce the dosha chart as well as the wheel of life chart. So these are the two basics. And added to that, I use the Kanban, like Sriniji said. And the third is mind mapping. I really enjoy that. Ideation and making it easy on, concreteness of ideas, basically. So anyway, that's back to you then. Thanks.
I did mind mapping recently for something, and it was really joyful. In the beginning, I was a little hesitant and found some friction in doing that, but I can see why you're saying that. I'd love to do more of it myself.
I think one of the things that we need to take away, part of the initiative of the YEC, is to allow people who are not as privileged, or people who, I wouldn't say if somebody's smart or not smart, somebody who's not as privileged with the lack of awareness, how do we practice these tools so that they become the tools of the second brain and the third brain for a common man, particularly an underprivileged, so that they have an opportunity to close the gap of the digitally haves, and then be the quarterback of the excellence in the worlds that they are part of. So I think that's one of the purpose behind YEC. So and Savitha garu, as you were saying about this vision boards and so on and so forth, all I could map it to is this, like how Patanjali actually defined that as a meditation. So the constantly when you stare at one image, and when your mind, that's what the meditation means. Tata pratyaya is the image. When your mind is constantly fixated on one mind, and when you are immersed in it, the more you immerse and the more you make that as wanting to make that as a reality, that's when samyama happens. It actually manifests, right? So all these are nothing but the tools of to create that focus and meditation and the immersion kind of stuff. So I'm in the absence of people who are not capable of doing that within themselves, having these systems and the tools, to create that samyama effect, which is so powerful. So that's all I have. And depending upon Kanika, it's so good to see you after such a long time. Would love to hear some of your thoughts.
Thank you, Sriniji. No, this was a very good session. I enjoyed it. I also have my own method of how I manage my time, just because, we're here in terms of a limited time, right? And you want to make the best of it, like you said, throughout for different aspects, right? Where you have obviously your career, you focus there, but then how do you manage the rest of those time, right? So whether it could be, engaging in your personal hobby or, exercise, fitness, whatever those elements of life that you want to do, right? So I have my own personal way. It may work for some people, it may not. It is similar. It just doesn't, it's just not in a tool, as Soundarya ji mentioned. It's it's something that I kind of do from a day-to-day perspective, right? I plan my week before how I want to manage that. So that just helps me get through the entire week a little bit more proactively rather than being reactive towards it. And as far as, goals and everything, I think when we start and look through our life, it's about making those short-term, long-term goals, yes, it's also defining, just being financially independent is one thing, right? But what does it actually mean to someone, right? It may mean one thing to me, but it may mean something else to someone else completely different, right? So I think once you define it, and I think we all have that creativeness within us, the ways in the house always come to us, right? Whether it be through some kind of investment or some opportunities that just show up. I think once you get to, when you're in a state of actually being able to fully define it, then those things line up. That's how I've envisioned it, or I'm starting to see it now, right? As opposed to before leading a default life, as I started when I spoke to you earlier, where is life happening to you or for you, right? So when you get to understand that difference between those two, it's a very subtle difference, but it takes time to click in which way is it actually going. It helps to get through certain elements, and it's a journey, and it'll always have the ups and downs, but knowing that if you're down today doesn't mean it's always there. You will see the progression, you will see the growth, and it's just a matter of being able to, like you said, envision it, right? Like those tools that we get, whether you script every day, or whether it's the journaling exercise, or whether creating that vision board, or even sometimes in a phone, right? All of those things, those are just tools that help you, right? Just to help give you that clarity of the mind. I think that's what it is, right? I think we all need that clarity around us, right? Because of so many things happening, the chaos that surrounds us. Once we get that, then the path becomes easier.
Love it, love it. And like this kind of dovetails back into the theme that YEC youth entrepreneur represents, which is Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasama Jyotirgamaya, Mrityurma Amritangamaya, which is where we go from a finite time, we are taking a finite time and making it infinite. We can make it, how much ever that we would want, right? And time is a fungible thing. It's not a fixed thing.
It only exists in our head, actually, right?
It's a fungible thing. Exactly. It's a fungible thing. So we will actually become. So Soundarya, what a beautiful, beautiful session. And thank you for leading us on this journey. And in some of the follow-on sessions, what we can also do is we'll perhaps like to take a peek into some other people's life gardens. I know some of us have some how do I say this? Some interesting plants, and how they take some time, like, some of them have, the gardens have like some 7 dabbas that Savitha Garu is going to share at some point. That's how she makes some time, which is very, very intriguing. Let me say that way. So on that note, Savitha Garu, you want to close the session today?
Yes. I mean, the prayer is going to be recited by you for sure. But I just want to...
Kiran is going to recite.
Kiran. Yes, definitely, Kiran. Soundarya, thank you so much. Please do continue to join our satsang going forward. And please do share the link, the template, if any one of us can use that. And thank you so much. And we wish you all the best, and more. We're looking forward to you to read many more books that you're going to write in future. Definitely.
And she's going to run the YEC.
Yes.
That's too much of a responsibility for me.
I mean, you can put that into your Notion, in a garden, and then it becomes very easy, right?
It's a jungle.
Thank you all. And I just wanted to say that I also learn a lot when I present, and I wrote down a few ideas I got from today's presentation. So really, thank you so much for listening to me. And that's the link if you want to take a look. Thank you.
Love it. Kiran?
Yeah.
Yep, I'll just say one more time that Soundarya, thank you so much. It's immensely helpful. Thank you for taking time and doing this for us. And Savitha and Srini, thank you for coordinating this. So we'll end with the closing prayer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. We'll see
Thank
you
you
again
all.
the
Thank
next weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.
Also.